conversation about actually solving the mental health crisis, that it needs to be a holistic conversation. It needs to include the people behind you who are the most affected by this crisis, and it needs to not include forced detention, forced hospitalization, and involuntary commitment. That's right. That's right. That's what we are here today, because here in New York, we believe in human rights, we believe in civil rights, but most of all, we believe that having a mental illness does not make you a criminal. That's right. That having a mental illness does not make you dangerous. That's right. And what we know is that by far, having a mental illness puts you at greater risk of being a victim. That's right. And we are telling that population that they don't deserve basic civil and human rights. So we will stand together. We will continue to show the entire continuum of care, of proposals, of added resources that we have and we know work, that other states have put to use. And we will not leave here without a full passage of Daniel's Law and full funding in this year's budget. So thank you all.
Other legislators are beginning to understand what we truly need. She's been a champion for us, and as she mentioned, we are pushing for many alternatives. I want to be very clear here. We are not asking to leave people on the street in need. What we are asking for is to support them without actually creating those services.
Right.
What we want to do is ensure that our community-based service system is able to meet the needs of folks in the most distressful situations. We want to make sure that we can get people off the street and into permanent housing. We want to make sure that we can get the support that people need to recover. And we can't do that without our workforce and our strong agencies. So I'd like to bring up Glenn Liebman of Mahaney's to talk a little bit about what we need for our workforce and how we can invest in voluntary services.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Arby. I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much. But I tell you, it's hard to follow Senator Brooks. It's incredible. Amazing advocate. But I just want to say a few things. First of all, as Luke said, a lot of this is about the ability for people to move forward in their lives. And the way they do that is to have funding in our system of care. And I'm not just talking about throwing money out there. I'm talking about real systemic changes. I'm talking about funding for staff, for workforce. We have a crisis in mental health. You don't have to tell any of you this. You all know this. We have a crisis in our system of care. And the bottom line is, if you did a systemic look at all the failures that our system has gone through over the years, you will find that a lot of it is staffing. The staff is trying their best to do a good job, but when you're overwhelmed by so much, and you have ratios of individuals of 1 to 50, 1 to 75, things will fall through the cracks. And that's just human nature. People are people. And we need the funding to bring in more of our workforce. We need a 7.8% increase in funding this year. I'm so glad that we have Senator to my left and Senator Brooke to my right, who are strong advocates for us, for workforce. And one other thing I just want to talk about briefly is that I ran Kendra's Law program. I was the first person who ran Kendra's Law program for the Office of Mental Health back in the 90s, or back in the 2000s. And I've got to say that we've talked about this. As Senator Brooks said, we've been here many times before. This is not our first rodeo. We've been here. The law has been tweaked. Have things really changed? No. Tweaking this law does not change things at all. What really changes is investments in our system. Now, the $16.5 million that has been put forward by the governor in terms of alternatives, we have to make sure that those are the alternatives, that the funding is for alternatives and not for enforcement of existing laws. We have to make sure that, I saw this from the start, I saw that people wanted to get better, people wanted services. They did want to go through a court order. The stigmatization of a court order, they didn't want to go through that. Counties didn't want to pay for this. They saw alternatives as the route to go. And now, 25 years later, we're finally getting some funding for it, and it's got to be funding for alternatives and not anything punitive. So that said, and I'm so glad to be here today. And the bottom line is that we have to realize that tweaking existing law, coming back year after year, seeing these policy changes, it's not going to change things. What's really going to change is true investments in our health, in our mental health system. So thank you very much.
All right, and along with our other legislative champion, today we have with us the new Assembly Mental Health Committee Chair, Assemblymember Joanne Simon.
Yeah. So, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. I apologize for being late, but I had a prior meeting. And so, what they said, what's critically important here is that we look at what's not been working and we work on fixing that. So many of the proposals that are made further the problem instead of helping to fix that problem, to solve that problem. We are all doing this work because we're problem solvers. And much of the approach that's been offered is really not solving the problem. And there were other examples given, but in New York City, for example, one of the issues they're trying to talk about is using a different standard which already exists in hospitalization for people who are already found to be a danger to themselves or others and retaining them. It's impossible to actually do that in the initial phase, but secondarily, they've been trying that in New York City, and they've picked up many, many people, and most of those people do not end up getting care. They don't end up getting admitted. And we find that those referrals, more of them are made from people in the home, right? People in people's lives. But those folks that are being picked up by police in New York City are back out on the street right away because they're not a danger to themselves or others. What they need is care. And they're not getting care from just changing that standard. And so we already have in New York City essentially a pilot of what we're talking about here. And the situation has not improved. Do you know anybody who thinks the situation in New York City is No. Of course not. So we know it's not going to work. And I'm not here to do things that don't work. We're trying to make things work for the people who need the help. That's why we're here. And so I'm really excited to be taking on this new responsibility. Of course, they could have done it to me in a year when it wasn't so fraught with controversy.
Now you're the right woman for the job.
I have a few fans here. But I'm really excited to be doing this work and to be working with all of the advocates and with my Senate counterpart who is wonderful. And she and I are working closely together to ensure that what New York does is treat the people in New York. Make sure that we pay our workforce so that the care that is given is quality care. We have more people doing that. You can't attract people to a field if you're not paying them. I mean, who would do that, right? So if this is just, that it's improving the workforce and getting a 7.8% increase would make all the difference in the world to number one, valuing the people we have, retaining the people we have, and recruiting more people to provide the care that we know works. There's so many programs that we know work. All you have to do is replicate what works, not what doesn't work.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Ruth Lowenkron of the New York Lawyers for Public Interest, who will talk a little bit about what we should be doing instead to create more accountability in the system rather than increasing forced treatment.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay, that was the excitement. I'm going to go through a little bit of a boring talk today because it's important to walk through exactly why expanding mental health commitment is wrong, Yes. And we have the right answer with voluntary services, social services, and you will hear from more speakers about all of that. But why is commitment wrong? First of all, what the governor is trying to do is address a climate of fear. We appreciate that, don't we?
No.
We have fears sometimes too. But she's going about it in the absolute wrong way. She is blaming people with mental health diagnoses for the fear that people have. And that could not be more wrong. You heard the senator tell you the statistics could not be clearer. People with mental health diagnoses are no more likely to be dangerous, to be violent than anyone else. No more likely. Why are we targeting people with mental health diagnoses? And as the senator also said, people with mental health diagnoses are much more likely to be the victims of violence. So we are going about this all the wrong way. We are glad there's a light shining on mental health, but this is the wrong way to do it. And this is the flowchart part of the lecture. Even if people with mental health diagnoses were violent, which they are not, the answer is not to lock them up in hospitals, not to coerce them. Again, take a look at the literature. The literature says that forced treatment really isn't treatment. What does it leave you with? It leaves you with treatment resistance, increased suicidality. Take a look, it's all footnoted in my testimony. I speak the truth on this. And going further on the flow chart, even if forced hospitalization were the answer, which it is not, there's no capacity. How do we talk about forcing people into hospitals when we don't have enough beds? That makes no sense. Take a look at the statistics in New York City. People waiting at Rikers over 100 days to get services. That's not the answer. Moving down further in the flow chart, even if there were capacity, and this is something the senator talked about as well. What do you do upon discharge? Right? It's at best a stopgap measure to have someone in a hospital, but we have to think about what happens next. There is little to no thought being given to that. We are grateful for those services that the governor has put in her budget, but they're not enough. Services, community-based services, social services. If someone is homeless, okay, let's all think, this is a trick question. Someone is homeless, what will help them? 1, 2, 3. Housing! Permanent housing. Supported housing. Yes. Right? This is not rocket science.
Cash assistance too. Cash assistance too.
Cash assistance.
Yes. We need those bills to pass.
Training. Clothing. What do we need to help people? That's what we have to think of. And you'll be surprised to know none of this was what I was supposed to talk about. So don't worry. I'm saying what I'm supposed to talk about. And this is the brilliant idea that we're resuscitating. It is about incident review panels. And this is what the assembly member was talking about. What is the problem? There are problems. We have seen people with mental health issues being violent. Very, very rarely. Again, just as rarely as anyone else. But what is it that caused that violence? Should we not know and therefore figure out what's wrong with the system? So, again, this is an easy question and with an easy answer. We in the legislature, the legislature has already passed a bill about incident review panels. 30 people, mental health law 31.37. Take a look at that. Legislators, let's make that mandatory. And then we will look at every incident, figure out what went wrong, where were the failed services, where do we need to invest. We're a smart society, we New Yorkers, and we're not just going to fall for the governor who says, get them off the streets, get them into the hospital, get them into outpatient commitment. No, we're going to look at what's wrong, and we're going to respond accordingly. That's right. Thanks very much.
Joanne Simon and Senator Sam Abreu, who co-chair with me on the Black Legislative Task Force on Mental Health as well. So I'm New York State Assembly Member Monique Chandler-Boardman, represented in Brooklyn. That do have and live with mental health conditions. So since taking office, I said I need to create task forces to make sure that the priorities of my office is centered by people with lived experience and peers. So I have a mental health task force. Some of you may know Christina Sparrow. She helped lead it and set it up. Yes. So and many of you have been part of that task force as well. As a lifetime advocate of mental health and justice, it is imperative that we understand the impacts of involuntary commitment. And I'm speaking to reaching to party here in crisis situations. This action impact mental health, civil liberties, but also overall well-being of our everyday in our society. Police is not the response to someone having a mental health crisis. Those who know, those who are lived experts, lived experience, are the ones who should be making the decision, along with stakeholders like legislators and community advocates. So in order to restore trust in systems, it's a trauma response when it comes to someone who does not know how to deal with someone in crisis, especially when you're forcing someone to do something that is not in their best interest. So as I will discuss for anyone that will listen, we need to make sure that when we set up systems, we have to understand the Black and brown community. When another community may get a cold, we get a flu, because there's a lot of disparities when it comes to our communities of colors. So we want to make sure that there's, when you come up with a system, that you need to make sure what can we do instead of. So voluntary services is what we have. We need local, culturally centered clubhouses. We need respite centers that can be up to 30 days in our communities. We need to make sure that it's person-centered. We need to make sure that peer advocates are there. We need to make sure that families are in the planning, before care, after care, during crisis, and making sure that they're prioritized in what's going on. We need to make sure there's true investment in the services that's needed. It's not always about beds, because there's a lot of mental health professionals that is not incentivized to even do this work. It's hard work. So if you keep on including beds and there's not enough people to staff the beds, you just have empty beds and you have the same issue. So we just want to make sure, as you hear from the advocates today, to expand peer services and family support programs. My family members is going through right now the peer program to get certified. It's great to understand what's going on with you, to be certified, and when you're in crisis, to have someone that with lived experience there as well. So we want to make sure it's enhanced, assertive community treatment. This evidence-based model and hospitalization would help out a lot. So workforce investment to make sure we have essential support. So there's a plan. It's called Daniel's Law. Daniel's task force of $1 million was invested into that. There was a lot of great ideas by a lot of great people that stand right here today. We want to make sure that as we invest into things, that we utilize it. We don't come with a Band-Aid approach as a voluntary commitment. We come with some real solutions. So Daniel's Law needs to be fully passed, fully funded, and that is part of the end solution for dealing with those in mental health crisis. It's not just a Band-Aid approach. Please, as we work together as legislators and advocates, I'm totally standing toe by toe, 10 toes down, side by side with our community members and our advocates to make sure Daniel Law is fully passed, fully funded, and I stand with my chair here today and all the advocates. I'm New York State Assembly Member Monique Chandler-Boardman. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you very much. Up next, and we will be ending shortly here, but we've got 3 other speakers. We want to hear directly from someone with lived experience of being involuntarily committed to outpatient treatment. So next we have Carla Rabinowitz to tell her story very quickly.
I was in the hospital. I was all over the house. I was sleeping in the street. Walking the street at 3 a.m. Where might be? I just started crying and available blood. I recognized myself. At one time, I was screaming up so hard, so often, I wore a boxing mouthpiece to stop me screaming. It's gonna work. I'm gonna stop screaming. Yes.
So, thank you, Carla. I'm going to read for her really quickly. Carla, do you want to stay here with me for a moment?
Carla, don't leave.
Love you, Carla.
Carla. Yes.
I want to tell my story about AOT. From 1996 to 2001, I got progressively sicker. I went in and out of hospitals and was all but lost to myself. I was screaming on the street. I was walking the city streets at 3 a.m., very unlike me. I described this time as my werewolf form, London time. I was unrecognizable to myself. At one time, I was screaming so hard and so often, I bought a boxer's mouthpiece to stop myself from screaming. It didn't work. I just spit out the mouthpiece and continued screaming. I lost my law license due to my severe mental illness. I went in front of a judge and they said AOT. I was in AOT for a year. I was in hospitals many times. It sucked. I did not like it. AOT separated me from life outside. Community Access hired me and saved my life. I started working at Community Access as part of the peer program, counseling people experiencing mental health issues after 9/11. Community Access is a place of healing. In my 20 years working at Community Access, peers helped me a lot. I got support from peers and they helped me find a home, live independently in a co-op, accumulate some money and save for retirement and find myself again. I felt motivated to see a psychiatrist and I was finally rewarded my law license back after lots of hard work. AOT did not have peers and I was drawn to peers. This is one story of very many. And we know what we can do to support people in a peer voluntary engagement model that doesn't utilize forced treatment. It's called the Intensive and Sustained Engagement Team model. And today we have here with us one of the folks who are running this program, which was funded by the governor, 5 of which were funded by the governor in the last few years, the governor and the legislature. So without further ado, Madupe from Baltic Street Wellness Solutions.
Hello everyone, good morning. It's a privilege to be here. I believe that one thing that makes my life worth living and the experiences that I've had is the privilege to be able to share those experiences of my recovery with peers that are going through something similar. Lived experience is, by every stretch of the imagination, equitable to professorial experience because I'm an expert on my life and my journey. That experience has to be worth something. And I'm glad that today we're talking about equity when it comes to pay structures for people in my profession, the peer specialists. The intensive and sustained engagement teams are indeed working. They are indeed a great investment because what they do, what they focus on, is providing individuals who may not have access, who may have suffered vulnerabilities from a broken system, who may have experienced the inequity that comes from being in one kind of community or the other, like the senator said, communities of color and those that are disenfranchised. That is what the inset is about, to provide them with the access, to help them, and provide the supports that will connect them with the services they so desperately need. Our work as peer support workers is not only to help them connect to those systems, but to hold them hand in hand and find out what it is they need. Because it's not about what I tell them they need. It's about what they want. It's person-centered, it's customized, it's personalized, because they deserve as good as this government can offer. They deserve the best. We deserve the best. And we're empowered to do the best. So the inset is working. And like you said, it's an exciting evolution of what the possibilities are when people exercise their franchise. My job is to find my voice and help others to find theirs. The way I help them to find theirs is to find out what it is they need and walk hand in hand with them to get them to what it is they need. Does it take time? Absolutely. Does it require patience? Hell yeah. And that's because I matter. They matter. And we will go the distance to continue say no, we will take the healthcare services to you. Guess what? It is working. There are evidence of that. So please, again, multi-stakeholder solutions, all about peer support. What makes the INSET model different is that it is peer-led. So we are you, and we are showing you how to get to those services and working with you to get them. I thank you all very much for your presence here this morning. Thank you all very much.
Passion over criminalization.
All right. Thank you very much. We have our last speaker for the day, Clay Sackett, the director of the Hudson Valley Clubhouse, the first accredited model clubhouse in upstate in years. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you to all the speakers. You brought such amazing clarity to this really poignant issue.
People, please, people
As we said
speaking.
earlier, this issue seems to keep coming up. It's like deja vu. We talked about it before. Senator Brooke said that coercion should be the last resort. It really is where we're at. All the other speakers have talked about a common thread of voluntary, person-centered services, community-based services. And there are so many out there. And several of our speakers have talked about that, the INSET program and Daniel's law. I'd like to talk a little bit about the clubhouse model. Many of you are familiar with the clubhouse model, which has been supported in New York City for many years. We're pleased that the governor has put money, $8.5 million, in the development of up to 7 clubhouses for upstate New York. The Hudson Valley Clubhouse exists for a year in Poughkeepsie, New York, and we believe that we are a paradigm or epitome of person-centered and voluntary services. The term holistic is used a lot. Maybe overused, but it really is important in the sense that if you focus on putting tax dollars into community-based services, we can reach a large number of individuals in need through housing, through employment, through education, through socialization, connecting people to needed services, and over time in our own small clubhouse. And
People, please lower your voices,
out of the
please.
state and around the world, the
Hola,
clubhouse
Catalina
model
Cruz.
addresses many of those issues. It helps people to build competency and self-esteem and to stay out of hospitals and to stay away from interaction with law enforcement system, to minimize emergency room usage. We feel like we've seen that play out in our first year. We're excited to continue and looking forward to working with other groups around the state as they seek to roll out this model of beautiful community-based, voluntary, person-centered clubhouse model. Thank you all. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you, Luke.
All right, thank you all for being here with us today. That is it for our program, but we will be all around the Capitol as well as pushing for the 7.8% rate enhancement at 2 p.m. in the morning. Thank you all.
Treatment is a human right. Fight. Treatment is a human right. Fight. I had my daughter, and then take it up your
Don't pay me no mind, just keep on walking. The two queens.
Yes, sir.